Hello and welcome to High Flyers, the show that gives you a 360-degree view of Asia's business elite. Today we meet a man who isn't afraid to voice his opinions. His outspoken personality has meant numerous high-profile controversies, but that hasn't stopped him from reaching for the prize, like building Australia's largest online retailer, Kogan.com. Let's meet Ruslan Kogan.
From the very beginning, Ruslan Kogan thought like an entrepreneur. When his family left Belarus for Australia, he knew that the only way he could have something was to earn it. He taught himself to think outside the box and set up a string of ventures while still in his teen years. His challenge to the status quo continues to this day. Time now for this high flyer to join us on the Singapore Flyer to tell us about his past, his present, and his ambitious future.
Ruslan Kogan, welcome to High Flyers. You had this big idea, this light bulb moment while shopping for an LCD TV at age 23. What happened?
The roots for the idea came, or the seed for the idea happened when I was studying in Miami a bit before that. And I noticed that all of the local kids were buying everything online, and they were buying it for much cheaper prices than all of the international students. You know, we'd go to Walmart to buy our stuff because that's what university told us was the best marketing, economies of scale and all of that. And then I see that they're buying things online for much cheaper, and I realize that a small online retailer can operate with greater efficiency than a Goliath like Walmart. Then a few months or years later in Australia, I was searching and looking to buy an LCD TV, and I saw that I couldn't afford one. They were really expensive at the time, and I decided to contact some factories out of China to tell them that, hey, I want to buy 100,000 TVs, hoping that they'd give me a quote, and then I'll ask them for a sample, and that sample was going to be my TV. However, when they started providing their quotes and pricing, I saw that there's a huge gap in the market, that a TV I could land in Australia for about $1,000 was selling in the shops for about $3,000. So I noticed that gap. Then I thought back to my days in Miami, and I thought online TVs are a perfect product because online retail is all about maximum value per cubic centimetre. And here you are shipping a thin box around the country, perfect for logistics, perfect for everything, and quit my job and started importing TVs.
But it wasn't as easy as that, because you needed to convince the Chinese suppliers to provide you with a small number of TVs and other products as well.
Yeah.
How did you convince them?
Things came to a halt pretty quickly because after I'd chosen the factory to work with, I contacted them and said, look, I don't want to do an order for 100,000 TVs. I just want to do one container of 80 TVs. And they laughed at me. So I was in a pretty tough position because I'd quit my job, went to start this business, but the factories are telling me, no, we can't do 80 TVs for you because China's all about mass production.
You did something for them first.
Correct. To me, business is all about win-win, and I thought, how can I make this a win-win? And out of all the factories I've spoken to in China, even these multi-billion-dollar organisations, a lot of their marketing material was in Chinglish. It didn't make sense. None of the images were aligned. Their spreadsheets had numbers centred in them. I really don't like it when people centre numbers. Numbers need to be right aligned into two decimal places. So I redid all of this for them. I redid their marketing brochures. I translated the Chinglish to English. I inserted diagrams in the user manuals. I made everything make sense. I annotated it. I made it look like a professional Western document. And I sent it back to them and I said, look, there might not be any value for you in my tiny order of 80 TVs, but there's other ways I can add value to this transaction. As a result of that, they replied a few hours later, thanking me, and they accepted my order and gave me an even better price than we had previously negotiated.
But not everybody's buying into this Kogan.com story. You have lots of criticisms, and of course among them coming from your own rivals. Some say that you don't respect intellectual property rights. The biggest criticism came from Jerry Harvey of Harvey Norman. He says, "You're a con. Everything you've promised is a con." Your response?
Yeah. To get that sort of reaction out of Jerry, I take that as a compliment. Anytime...
Is there truth in that?
That we're a con? We operate a business with millions of customers in a country with an amazing legal system. If we were a con, we would have been found out by now. Instead, we have millions of happy customers. We believe we respect all intellectual property law. We've never had anyone prove otherwise. But there's no doubt we're going to have critics. We're changing the way retail is done in Australia.
Your mom was not convinced. When you tried to start your own company, you had a full-time job with a corporate job. She says, "Why are you leaving a well-paying job to be a TV salesman?"
Yeah, not only did she say that, she started crying. And it was tough because I'm trying to explain to a crying mother that I'm not really about to be a TV salesman. I'm starting a direct-to-consumer online retailer where we manufacture our own private label products and deliver them for better prices than anyone else.
And she went like, "What?"
Yeah, and, you know, she didn't really understand it. Now she understands what we do, and she no longer cries, and she's very happy. But back then it was tough to convince her. In fact, I didn't convince her. I just had to go out on a limb and do what I thought was right.
What's the biggest setback you faced?
I should have bought the Kogan.com domain on day one. You know, when the business launched, I bought the domain name Kogan.com.au, didn't buy Kogan.com. We expanded internationally. Then I had to buy Kogan.com for a number with a lot of zeros on the end of it a few years later. That's a mistake. You know, I've learned since then how important intellectual property is and how important it is to protect all of your intellectual property. So mistakes happen along the way, but the most important thing is that from every mistake you learn the hard truth, you acknowledge the facts, and then you ensure that it never happens again.
Coming up.
When the Social Network movie came out, everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur after that movie, which is weird. I didn't watch Spider-Man and decide that I want to be a spider.
Ruslan Kogan essentially equates unconventional. Anyone looking for a job with you better not sending his or her resume via Hotmail. Why is that?
To us, we know that somebody who's using Hotmail, chances are they set their email address up 15 years ago and have just never bothered to look at what else is out there. Newer technologies have come along, like Gmail, which lets you search your emails much easier, which we use internally in our organisation. Also, we look favourably at people who have their own domain name. So somebody who purchased their name.com and uses that as an email. We want tech-savvy people. We want people who know how to research online, who keep up with technology, who swim against the current, and that's why that's one of those little things, like your email address, we believe says a lot about you. And we've proven it as well. We have logical reasoning tests that we send to everybody who applies for a job.
Is it fair to say then that the typical profile of your employee is either the Gen Y, the millennials?
It would be, yeah. People who grew up with the internet are much more likely to succeed when they apply for a job at Kogan than if they don't know how to use the internet.
So the average age would be 26?
Yeah, 26, 27 is about the average age. At 32, I'm one of our oldest staff.
It's okay because you're the boss. Now, you don't believe in official training, formal training, because you say all the answers are right there. Google.
Correct. We think that formal training is for people who want to look like they're learning, whereas Google is for people who actually want to learn. So for a lot of our senior managers, formal training isn't an option because most of the things we're doing, no formal training exists. By the time something gets into a university degree or some sort of formal training, it's old information. Whereas if a new piece of software comes out today, you can learn about it tomorrow on Google. And we're solving problems for the first time. And that's why we need to teach our staff not to rely on others for information, but to go out there and get it themselves.
You don't reward your employees in the natural way. There's no one time where you look at promoting them or rewarding them in terms of compensation. Anyone is able to walk up to you and justify a promotion.
When I worked in the corporate world, I learnt a lot about what not to do to keep staff motivated and to build a great workforce. And one of those things was the annual review process, where once a year in September you sit down with your boss and they discuss things, then they give you a 5% pay rise. And it causes staff to all of a sudden in August, everyone's there at 7 a.m, everyone's going home at 9 p.m, everybody's working so hard. Annual pay review comes, nobody's there in October. So we learned that to run a meritocracy, and what we've implemented at Kogan is any staff member, we don't care how old you are, whether you're male or female, what university degree you have. We care about university degrees when we hire you, because a university degree means you can read and write and you can commit to something for 3 or 4 years. But beyond that, we don't care what you've done in your previous jobs or anything like that. We care about what you're doing right now. And as a result of this meritocracy, we've had staff who have had 6 pay rises in 6 months. It was one 19-year-old, 6 pay rises in his first 6 months, earning 6 digits on the senior management team. So we value what your actual performance is rather than any other external bureaucratic measures.
9 years ago when you started, it was 1 store. 9 years later, it's still 1 store, but you've grown from 1 employee to almost 200. How big do you think Kogan will become?
Yeah. You're spot on. 1 year ago we had 1, or 9 years ago 1 store, now 1 store. In 10 years' time we'll still have 1 store. We're all about scalability. So we're building our online presence and we'll scale it from there. If you said to me 5 years ago, how big will Kogan be in 5 years' time? I would not have guessed it is where it is today, and being a retailer turning over hundreds of millions of dollars. If you said to me, where's it going to be in 5 years' time, I'm not even brave enough to have a guess.
But when was it that you knew you had something big? Was there a turning point?
Yeah, the business started by selling 2 SKUs. It was two Kogan branded TVs. Then it grew a bit in the consumer electronics range. And it's when we started that growth and I realized that, look, this business model works for whatever product we decide to put through our manufacturing, our supply chain and our logistics. And at that point I realized that the growth potential of this business is enormous.
So what, $1 billion company in no time, in a couple of years? Is that a possibility? That is possible.
If you drew the graph for what we've done in the last 9 years, you'd have us at $1 billion within the next few years.
You're an entrepreneur, but more and more people are calling themselves an entrepreneur. Do you think the term has somewhat been diluted by it all?
Yeah, look, I've never called myself an entrepreneur as such. It's more a title I let others call me. My Facebook says I'm the toilet paper roll changer at Kogan, because I still change the toilet paper rolls. You have to do everything in a business when a business is growing fast. When the Social Network movie came out, I think that it made entrepreneurship more glamorous, because everybody watched it and said, hang on a second, going by this movie, 2 hours ago Mark Zuckerberg had 0, now he's got tens of billions of dollars, and everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur after that movie. Which is weird. I didn't watch Spider-Man and decide that I want to be a spider. That movie made entrepreneurship glamorous, and I think that that's a great thing, because what people fail to acknowledge a lot of the time is the contribution business makes to society. There's an entrepreneur behind every product or service losing sleep, thinking, how do I make it better?
So how much sleep did you lose trying to grow your company?
Yeah, I don't think I've lost any sleep, because I voluntarily jump out of bed every single morning. Look, it's tough. I've had, at some entrepreneur conferences, people come to me and they say things like, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur like you. I'm sick and tired of the 40-hour week. And that just makes me laugh on the inside, because the last time I did a 40-hour week was when I was in the corporate world at Accenture.
You do up to 100 hours a week.
Yeah, sometimes even more, but yeah, usually between the 70 to 100 hours a week mark. The best thing about it is, though, that I love what I'm doing. I jump out of bed and I do it. I jump out in the middle of the night if I had an idea, and I run to my laptop to write myself an email. You know, doesn't always make my girlfriend happy, but, you know, it's a great feeling when you love what you do.
Coming up.
You get addicted to the game, and that's what makes me jump out of bed in the morning.
Ruslan, yours is the perfect immigrant story. Mom and Dad left Belarus, came to Australia in 1989 with just $90 in their pocket. They had a hard life to ensure that you had a better one.
Definitely, and I appreciate it so much more now that, you know, I've grown up and I get to understand what they went through. And I also now credit a lot of what I've achieved with Kogan to the life lessons that they taught me. Because when you think about what it takes to be an immigrant or an entrepreneur, they're very similar. To be an immigrant, you have to drop everything you've got, take a massive risk, travel into the unknown, work your butt off for a potential benefit that might not be there. An entrepreneur does exactly the same thing. And watching my parents arrive with $90, work 3 or 4 jobs each, Dad would work as a taxi driver during the night, then deliver pizzas, then work at the Victoria Market, Mum would be a cleaner at one cafe, waitress at another, then they're studying English as well at the same time, trying to educate themselves for a better life for their kids. It made me have an incredible work ethic and determination, and I knew from a very young age that I can do anything as long as I work my butt off to do it.
Mom and Dad were highly qualified as well. Mom qualified medically, Dad an engineer by training. How did you feel seeing your dad and mom holding those jobs when they were highly qualified back home?
Yeah, I was 5.5 years old, so, you know, it didn't really click to me that, you know, I didn't understand the, you know, Dad has a master's in engineering, and here he is driving a taxi or, you know, working at the Victoria Market, you know, and the same with Mum. It just doesn't click, and you learn to appreciate those things as you get older and you reminisce about it. So, you know, I think about it now and I thank them every single day for what they did.
And in the early days, you lived in public housing?
We did. We grew up in the Housing Commission flats in Melbourne.
And you always passed a canal. Tell us
Yes.
about that canal and how significant it is.
It was significant in the sense that as a little kid, all the bigger kids were jumping over it, so I'd always climb the barbed wire fence and try to jump it, and, you know, I'd come home with wet shoes and all of that, and then finally managed to jump over it. But also that it ran through the golf course, and in the canal you'd find washed up golf balls and along the fence line, and I'd collect them, put them in egg cartons, wash them, and then sell them back to the golfers. That was the first money that I'd ever earned myself.
And since then, you actually started about 20 or so ventures, and that was the start of your entrepreneurship experience.
You know, from a young age, my parents taught me that if I want something, I have to earn it. So with the golf balls, you know, it wasn't big money. It was like $10 or $20 a weekend. But at the age of 9, that makes you pimp of the milk bar. So whenever I'd go to the shops, I'd buy whatever candy I wanted. Then, you know, after that, it led to my parents would give me $5 to wash their car, until we were at a shopping centre and I saw a big billboard that said car wash, half price, only $40. And I thought, hang on a second, I'm getting ripped off here. So I went and printed all these business cards, did a drop around the neighbourhood, went to all their houses, and then packed a hose with a few sponges into a backpack, walked around, and people were paying me $15 to wash their car. Then started taking bookings, then started hiring some of my friends because I couldn't do it all on my own. So, you know, there was that, then mobile phone repair, website design business through high school. There's always been a lot of ventures along the way, and obviously it all culminated in Kogan.com, which is, you know, my baby.
You're worth about $350 million and counting. One of the richest young people in Australia. Has life changed? And it would be a lie if you say it hasn't.
Certain things changed. Like, I never got to go into the high flyer before. And, you know, here we are seeing all of Singapore. But look, I fly up the front of a plane now. I, you know,
drive a nice car.
Yeah, you know,
live on St Kilda's.
Yeah, live in St Kilda, and it's a modest apartment, but like the things I really enjoy, the money hasn't really changed. Like, I love fishing. I wish the fish knew how much money's in my bank account, but they don't. You know, so I don't catch any more based on...
But isn't it cliche to say that money does not matter, that you're not chasing money when you already have money?
If you look at business people around the world, like Steve Jobs kept going up until he had a few weeks left. Why? Because he really wanted the money? Why is Richard Branson turning up to work at the moment? Because he really wants the money? Why is Rupert Murdoch working? Because he really wants the money? No, I could retire right now. I'd never have to work another day in my life. I could have whatever I want. My kids will never have to work a day in their life, and their kids and their kids and their kids. You get addicted to the game and you love the challenge. And entrepreneurs create all the products and services that enhance our lives. And they thrive on competition. And that's what makes me jump out of bed in the morning.
And speaking of Richard Branson, you put a down payment of $200,000 to go to outer space.
When I saw the Virgin Galactic program launch, it struck a few chords with me. One was that, like, you know, as a little kid, you say you want to be an astronaut. By the time you reach 10 or 15 years old, you realize that that's not going to happen. And then at about the age of 28, I realized again, oh, it might happen. You know, so it struck that chord with me. But the other one being that both Russia and the US have sent 498 people into space, and they've spent over $500 billion on their space program. That is over $1 billion per person into space. Richard Branson is doing it for $200,000. I'm a capitalist. I love free markets. And this is a perfect symbol of what a private enterprise can achieve and what government can achieve. Richard Branson is sending people into space for 1/5,000th of the cost of what the governments have done it for in the past. So based on that, I felt an affinity to the program as well, and that's why I joined.
But Mom is not liking the idea of you going into space.
Oh, Mum despises the idea. Mum keeps telling me, you're not going to go, you're not going to go. As long as I'm alive, you're not going. So, yeah, she really doesn't like the idea, but I might have to do what I did with skydiving with her, where I flew to New Zealand saying I've got a few business meetings, went skydiving, then she saw the video on YouTube and on my Facebook and nearly killed me. You know, so she told me not to go skydiving either. So I might just tell her, oh, Mum, I'm going camping in the Mojave Desert. Then we'll see what happens.
You're a lot of things to a lot of people. How would you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? It's a good question. Probably by the things that are most important in life. So I want to be remembered as a good son and a good brother. They're for me, I'd say, the most important things at the moment.
Ruslan Kogan, thank you so much for being on High Fly. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to chat.